Okay. So, now, here was the problem in Europe, and this, of course, going to eventually get to Christians first, that with the rise of psychology, before Freud and all of his buddies, you couldn't go to a university and say, where's the psychology department? Because there wasn't one. And the very audacity of calling it psychology, psyche logos, in Greek, psyche, psycho means the mind, consciousness. And logos, of course, means the logical explanation of something. And so, with the rise of psychology, Freud was trying, because after Newton, everybody was trying to create the science of something, like, let's create a science of politics and call it political science. Let's create a science of society and call it social science. Then you get people like Hegel, who want to create a science of history, a science of everything, of all human history. And so similarly, Freud, in that was the mood back then in the West, like, let's create a science of the mind. Let's create a science of consciousness. There was only one little problem there. A true science must establish deterministic relationships. It's just like in physics. Let's say, for example, you throw a ball. You can calculate, if you know exactly the force with which the ball was thrown, the exact direction, the gravity, for example, are you 5,000 meters up, or are you at sea level? If you know all the relevant facts, you can predict where the ball's going to go and where it's going to land. And if you cannot predict a material event, it means you don't understand it. It's like in medical science. If we really find a cure for a disease, what does that mean? It means we can predict that if you have this disease and you take this medicine, you'll get better. So the ability to predict is one of the hallmarks of science. If you come up with a theory that does not improve your ability to predict, you haven't got a real science. Now, transfer that to psychology. If you have a true science of the mind, it means you can predict what people will feel and do under certain circumstances. But if that's the case, it means that people are deterministically controlled by their events, and that means they have no free will. Because if people have free will, then, okay, let's say, typical thing, American song, "You done me wrong." You've heard songs like that, right? In English, that means you did something bad to me. You done me wrong. So, I am very proud to be associated with such a sophisticated culture. Anyway, so can't avoid all the pride I feel. So the point is that people started trickling down. That, yeah, we now have a science of the mind. And so how did it play out? What's the trickle down version of this science of the mind? You say to somebody, "You are being very rude to me right now." And they say, "You don't know what I've been through." Or, "You promised me that you would be faithful." "You don't know how my father treated me." In other words, people are opting out of moral responsibility by referring to a set of circumstances that determined beyond their will that they must act in a certain way. Therefore, I'm not morally responsible. I can do all kinds, and you find this, for example, sometimes you have certain groups in society who, for whatever reason, historically, were not treated as well as they should have been. And therefore, they can never, ever be responsible for any bad thing they do. They can kill, rape. I don't mean to say that, that people who are treated badly kill and rape all the time. But I'm saying, in the case, if someone commits a crime, well, you don't understand, that's because historically his people were blah, blah, blah. So there's this liberal move to absolve historically discriminated people, that they're absolved of all moral responsibility. They technically cannot do anything wrong because whatever they do, it's our fault. And you find how this plays out in relationships where you can be with someone and they don't keep their promises, they don't treat you properly, but it's not their fault. It's your fault for reminding me of my father. And so existentialism was a reaction against all this and saying, I don't give a damn what happened to you. You are still responsible. You still have to behave like a moral human being. And you cannot justify immoral behavior, inappropriate behavior by reference to a set of circumstances. Two wrongs don't make a right. And so Sartre, who saw what he believed were French citoyens, his fellow French citizen, actually kind of enthusiastic to help the Nazis. Yeah, I think I saw a few Jews yesterday. I think they're turned left at the barber shop, and they were kind of, this psychological determinism. I've been traumatized by the Nazi invasion, and therefore I'm not responsible. And so beware of this. Beware of this. For example, it's probably not a great idea to start a relationship with someone or marry someone who feels that technically anything they do is justified because of something that happened before they met you. Beware of people that tend to absolve themselves of moral responsibility for their acts. So, and I want to read these verses from the Gita where you see that Krishna is the original existentialist philosopher. It's chapter 6, text 5 and 6. Is Prabhupada Gita. Okay, I'll read the Sanskrit first. Follow the bouncing chakra. That's an old thing. So Krishna says, Udharet atmanat manam, not manam of asadi. Atmaiva hyatmano bandhur, atmaiva riparatmana. You may have noticed the word atma occurs a lot in that verse. And so I'm going to translate this very, very literally. Exactly what Krishna is saying literally in Sanskrit. He says that one should literally uplift oneself or elevate oneself. One should uplift oneself by oneself. Literally, one should uplift oneself by oneself. Not manam of asarya. One should not degrade oneself. You should uplift yourself, not push yourself down. Atmaivahi atmanobandhur. The self alone, in fact, is the self's friend. It's very interesting, isn't it? You alone are your friend. The self alone is the self's friend. Atmaiva, eva means only. And the self alone is the self's enemy. And obviously, in this context, what Krishna means is that to be a friend to someone is to do what is beneficial for them. That's what it means to be a friend. You only do what is good for someone, what is beneficial. You never do what will harm them. So you alone are your friend, the friend who can lift you up. No one else can do it for you. People can point the way. A guru, a friend can say, it's that way. So, someone can point the way, but you have to do it. Only you can uplift yourself, and in so doing, be your friend, be your own friend. And only you can degrade yourself. No one else can degrade you. So no blame game here. No blame game. You alone can push yourself down. No one else can do it. No one can degrade you. No one can push you down. No one can make you unhappy. No one can make us unhappy. If we were a fool enough to become attached to a fool, then we made ourselves unhappy. So, you done me wrong. That's, well, no one can do you wrong. I mean, so again, so I'll go to the next verse. The next verse is, Krishna says, by the way, tomorrow I'll be giving American speech classes if anyone wants to learn how to talk this way. So the next verse, Krishna says, Bandhurat matmanas tasya jainat bhaivatmanajita. That the self is a friend of himself or herself. One is one's own friend when the self, by himself or herself, controls oneself. I mean, this is one Sanskrit sentence that uses the word self 1, 2, 3, 4 times in one fairly short sentence. It's only 16 syllables. In 16 syllables, in one short phrase, Krishna uses the word self 4 times. And so he's not only saying something, making a philosophical statement, but the very linguistic style is reinforcing his point. Self, 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 not somebody else. So his constant repetition of the word self is he's using his literary style to reinforce what he's saying philosophically. And so Krishna says that, so Jita is a past passive participle, as you know. The same word Jai. Like if Jai means victory, Jita means like conquered, like something is conquered. And so when you control yourself, when you conquer yourself, I mean, imagine, for example, let's say you're learning to play the keyboard. Example from my personal life experience as a keyboard. Just kidding. Anyway, let's say, for example, my father told really bad jokes, and he was a great father, and I think
Don't blame anyone, Raj.
I was just thinking that. Okay, here's an example. Let's say you've got music in your head. Like your mind is filled with beautiful melodies and harmonies. And you want to play them, but you don't know how to play. This is a real experience. If you're learning to play a musical instrument, and there's really music, I mean, you can hear the music in your mind, you just can't reproduce it. Flute player, right? It's true, isn't it? And then you have to learn technique, and you learn until you find, hopefully, if you stick to it, where you get to the point where you can express the music that's inside of you. And so, so what does it mean to learn technique in music? It means you've got to control your hands. It's like, hand-eye coordination. You see music, the notes on a sheet, and your hand goes anywhere but to those places. And, or you just don't have the agility, you can't move fast enough, or you hit 2 keys when you're supposed to hit 1, or 1 when you're supposed to hit 2. You just can't do it because you don't have that control over your body. Or imagine a pole vaulter.